today is the September meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. Welcome, everybody. I don't know how many of you have been here since, but this is our inaugural meeting. So we have been, so there is no first annual. This is our 1 year meeting. So 1 year ago, actually would be next week, we started meeting. So if you've been coming since the beginning, you've read at least 12 books if you've kept up with the books. So yeah, 12-ish. So but yeah, so really happy to have you all here, and looking forward to some good discussions today about some different stuff. So we read this month, we read Fascinate by Sally Hogshead, New York Times bestselling book, one of her 2 New York Times bestselling books. I will let you know that I did have the privilege of interviewing Sally at her home here in Jacksonville, at her childhood home, where she said, "Yep, my prom dress is right upstairs." And yeah, and so it's great. I've known Sally for about 10 years. When she first wrote this book in 2008, in 2009 we had a chapter here that me and another colleague started of the American Marketing Association, and Sally headlined our first big local event. So we had about 120 people. It was a full day event, and her book had been out, and she was really just getting into speaking. So it was really cool to be able to have her there and get the professional speaker experience. So kept in touch since, and was really happy that we got a chance to get there. She's sorry that she couldn't make it here. She's got a lot going on. She's got a lot of speaking engagements still, and she's writing another book. So I did about a 30-minute interview with her. It's all edited. I just need to publish it, and it's a pretty big file, so I'll have it later tonight. So if you are on the make sure you're on the email list so you can get a copy of it. I will share it also with Facebook for this one, but make sure you're on the email list so you can get a copy of it, and all the other great stuff that goes with that. So yeah, so Fascinate. There are some things that are a little different maybe than some of the other books that we've read, probably because probably not surprising since it was originally written in 2008, but it has been revised and updated, and it's kind of interesting to do. So we'll just start with an open question to what did anybody think?
So Chris,
Yeah.
The very first few chapters were very interesting to me.
Okay.
It fascinated me. And I really think it makes you, it's a different, like you said, the topic comes from almost a different angle than our other marketing. And I actually even sent my notes that I highlighted from my Kindle when I was reading it to my email so I could print it out, because some of her thoughts, I mean, it's so succinct, and not that I can always be that way. I think the most telling, maybe there's several I have here, but the one that really I think hit me the hardest was, if you're not adding value, you're just taking up space.
Yeah.
Harsh, but true.
Yeah.
That hurt a little. Take the knife out of my back. Ouch. And it really is true. It was just an annoyance. I think that's partly why a lot of times I don't tweet a lot, because sometimes I know people like to do that to keep in people's minds, but to me it's annoying. So I look at it slightly differently. If we're having a landlord tenant workshop tomorrow, so I am sending out, I even said I've got more hits on LinkedIn than anywhere else, which was awesome.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, it kind of blew me away. I got 30 some hits right from that.
Wow.
So, and found some local places to advertise too. So this is in our inaugural Zoom hybrid of, it's from Pennsylvanians for a Modern Courts.
Mm-hmm.
They put the presentation together, they connect with the judges, but was doing the PR.
Yeah.
And so I had silly things that I get emails for. There's a thing called Patch. There's a thing called Incline, because there's inclines here in Pittsburgh. Very odd thing, but I advertised in those places, as well as people mostly know the Post Gazette, Pittsburgh Post Gazette, but there's also Pittsburgh Trib, which if it's a free event and it's community, it doesn't cost you a thing.
Oh, nice.
You can post it, and I did it, and it was, you know what, that was exciting to me.
Yeah, it's great to find those opportunities.
Yes, but I think, I don't know how other people feel, but I think with the library, we fit into some of her categories, but alert seems to be the most appropriate for us. We're a law library. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Allegheny County Law Library, and I'm a reference librarian here. Obviously, the marketing person. And Angela says, "Shut up, Lord." I love you, Angela. I really do. I love your little podcast.
Oh, thank you. I love you too,
Lori. I mean it. I really mean it. I put a flag on yours. Yes, I do. I recently, can I just say real quick, and then I'll truly shut up. We're looking at security issues at the library. Okay. We don't have a panic button, so that's dangerous. But I just wanted to share with you, there's an excellent book called The Black Belt Librarian that is not totally current, but there's also a video or a PowerPoint that the author narrates. I think I can't remember his name, Warren Thatcher, something like that. I could look that up and let you know. But anyway, he is like dead on, no pun intended. And no, we aren't going to be black belts, but he tells you as a librarian, just doing a little bit of that research, guys. I'm telling you, there are people out there he was a security guard at a Southern Carolina library for many years. He's not a librarian, but he knows how libraries work. He's had enough experience. He's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Sorry.
No, it's excellent, Lori.
Go back to the book. This book is awesome. I mean, I know it's not marketing, but it's, oh my God. It's a lifesaver for us. We only have 4 people here, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's great, Lori. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that is, a harsh but true statement there. If you're not adding value, you're just taking up space, and it's a good way to keep in mind when you're communicating, because again, we talk a lot about things like, well, our stuff is for everybody, so we're just going to message everybody. And we feel like, sometimes we can feel like we're adding value because we're like, well, they might want this, but if we can find ways to get closer to people so that we are adding value for them specifically. And that's what I think is interesting about this book, is that there's a lot about how to communicate with based on kind of how your library thinks and acts, and what your sort of basic philosophy is. Wasn't quite as much about customer targeting here in this, like not like practical, not like real direct stuff about that, but still, I mean, it talks a lot about that. And so I think that's an important point to bring up in the book, is that, if you're not adding value. And I know with LinkedIn, I know Angela Hirsch, big fan of LinkedIn, and great to hear that LinkedIn is working, because it's a great way to reach. There are people that are on there for a specific purpose, and there's definitely some great purposes there. So what else? What other thoughts do y'all have about the book?
Well, I'll tell you, I only got to, I don't know what chapter this is, but I got to the passion chapter. So that's as far as I've gotten so far. But of the chapters I read, I think this is my favorite. And we were talking about how it's not really marketing, but it kind of is, because I feel like it gets to the writing part of marketing, which I often feel like in libraries, because we have so many things to think about, maybe the writing is almost the last thing that we think about. Yeah. And I love writing. And so I got a whole bunch of new ideas from the way that she talks about using language, especially to differentiate your brand with passion words. And I kind of have flipped forward and looked. I love the graphics.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could get the end paper as a poster for my office, because
I'm going to see what I can do.
That's really helpful, but it's also a lot.
Yeah.
I found a lot of value in that particular chapter. I kind of looked forward a little bit. So the trust chapter is probably going to be really interesting also, I think, and probably applicable to libraries. So if anybody's read that one, I'd love to hear about it. Prestige, I don't know. That'll be interesting to go through. And then I'm curious to hear about the alert stuff too, since Lori likes it.
Yeah.
So that's my confession. I didn't get through it, but I've spent a lot of time in this passion chapter because I really like it.
That's great. Well, no, I think, yeah, as always, it's great that, even have a chance to read something, some portion of it. I think it's really good. There's so a couple things, but yeah, I think passion is a very interesting advantage to look at. One thing I wanted to find out, and I guess raise of hands or somehow chat or something, who's done the brand fascination profile? I think a few. Rachel, you did it. Mary, you did one. Rachel, Mary, do you remember what yours were?
Trust. Mine was trust.
Both trust
for me
yeah
too.
Ours is trust also. I saw a few others on there though that were I saw alert, and I think I saw another one too. There was another, but there were a couple different ones, which was kind of interesting that there were, I sort of expected, it's all libraries are all going to kind of be trust, but I think that, that it does that. So I really encourage everybody to go and do that. So if you haven't, I'll put it in there, but if you haven't, from the book, if you go to brandfascination.com, you can do a free test. It's like a little survey, and it gives you, I think, a 16-page report on your brand's fascination advantage, and all these different ways of how you can use that and apply it. So it's, it's kind of extracts some of that from the book. There's another book, another best-selling book that Sally had called How the World Sees You. And I don't remember if it still does, but for a time you could even do one for yourself. So you could see, what is your fascination advantage? How do you fascinate? And that was also a pretty neat thing to do. But yeah, I encourage everybody to go and take a look at that. There's something else too about, if I can drop this in, about reading and not reading books. If you've ever listened to, or if you ever heard of Morning Brew, have you all heard of what Morning Brew? Do you know what that is? It's a daily newsletter, and it's kind of like this all business newsletter. They have a Marketing Brew one that comes out in the afternoon, so you can sign up for that. But one of the founders has this podcast called Founders Journal, and usually the episodes are only about 10 to 15 minutes. Some are a little bit longer, but he had one recently, and I'll share it with y'all when I find it. It's somebody who talked about reading a book, and somebody who, as he describes as a polymath, somebody who's read just, probably hundreds or thousands of books. And when he says read books, what he's done is, a lot of books, once you kind of get the idea and realize that, oh, I kind of see where this is going, and I kind of get the gist, and that's all, his MO is, okay, that's good for me. I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep moving on. And he may refer back to other things. He may finish up, but he doesn't have like the completionist mind of having to finish every single book, but still gets an awful lot out of a lot of books. Also knows when to bail. So it's an interesting concept, I think. Maybe not the best one for a book club, but not a bad one for a book club, because we're all real busy, and there's a lot of cool stuff that you can get out of it, I think. So anyway, that was a couple things to share, but what else? Rachel, if I can put you on the spot, Rachel, if you saw in the Facebook group, was gifted a bottle of 19 Crimes wine. And I didn't ask her yet, and I didn't, but hopefully she'll tell us what her crime was and if you have any thoughts about the book.
So we haven't opened the bottle yet, so I don't know yet what the crime was.
Such mystique, yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited, but we had a busy weekend with other stuff. But yeah, I liked the book a lot. I think, as some people have said already, it was a very different approach than a lot of what we've looked at before. Chris, you mentioned that a lot of what we've looked at has talked about targeted marketing and looking at different audiences, which this didn't do as much, which I kind of liked because it was nice to think about. I mean, really for me, this book was about identifying what makes she uses the word brand a lot. I don't really think of our library as having a brand, but I'll use the word brand of what makes your brand different.
Yes.
I had a Post-it flag on that page that said, better is weak, different is king. So better, I mean, anybody can be better. And that's not, that's not special, because you can be better and then someone else will come along and be even better than you. So that's not something to cling to. But different is king, finding those things that make your library different from other resources that people have in town, or your library events different from what other events and programs are available on your campus, etc. So I really liked that. I found myself, I took the brand fascination quiz and also got trust, but I found myself really looking hard at, later in the book where she talks about how, to use the different tactics if you are the brand. I was looking a lot at how, for instance, trust brands can use the passion tactic. Because I think the way she talked about passion and that warmth and that human connection is something that I think works really, really well, at least for our library. And I would not be surprised to hear that it works for a lot of libraries, because it's that combination of being the trust brand where you're reliable, you're predictable in good ways, people feel safe relying on you, but that passion, that connection, and she mentioned that passion is all about telling stories. Which, Angela, I agree with you. I love writing. I love writing for our blog. I love writing about the library. And I think that those two work together really well.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rachel. And Angela and others that, who may have not had time to, may not made it through, everything, or kind of got to some different stuff. That's interesting. So there are the advantages, the passion, the trust, the mystique, and all of those. But then there's a section in the last part of the book, that in the next to last part of the book, about how to apply it. And it's using the trust advantage, or using trust with passion, using trust with alert, using trust with, and so it's, this book I think works. And Rachel, kind of what you brought up, I think it works both as a cover to cover reader, but it also works as a reference book, because once you figure out what your brand's advantage is, then you will want to be looking through to find out, okay, maybe bookmarking things in there that are like, okay, this pertains to the trust brand, and this is how I can do the trust brand. And How the World Sees You is a similar setup. So it's kind of part story and part reference book, and that makes it kind of neat. And you talked about the targeted audiences, and I can tell you that in the interview that I did with her, I asked her about that. And I was like, well, you really don't talk about, targeted audiences. A lot of what the marketing focus today is on, what are you doing for your audience? How are you paying attention to your audience? And I know that it's in this, but it's just not maybe in it the same way that the books are today. And so she does talk about that. She talks about how it's not just, because when we read Story Brand, I thought, oh, this is totally contrary to Story Brand, but it's not really, because it's not about being fascinating for the purpose of being fascinating. It's not about being fascinating to draw, just to draw attention. It's about making your customers feel fascinating because you understand how to fascinate. So it's, I think there's some layers here. And then, her next book is actually called Different is Better better than better. So that's the building on this premise. So yeah, what other thoughts does anybody have? This is good. I can wait. Let me see. Yeah.
I can say something else. So, I mean,
sure,
this was
Rachel.
more of something that made me chuckle as I was finishing the book yesterday. But it also made me think about, especially if most of us feel like our brand, our main advantage is trust. Mm-hmm. She, in her last sort of summary of trust, I don't remember exactly where it was, but she specifically mentioned Wells Fargo.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand, obviously, the book is not brand new. It was written in 2008 and then updated in 2016. Yeah. And so I wrote a note in the margins about, well, this description of Wells Fargo as having the corner on the market on trust did not age well. But it made me think that I think it brought up an interesting point to me, which is you can figure out what your brand's main advantage is, but you can't just say, oh, okay, well, that's what it was, and that's what it is forever. Like, it's something that you have to continually work on. You can't just say, oh, well, we're a library, we provide reliable information, so we must be trust. And then let's just work from there with that assumption. That there's a lot that goes into making sure everything you do builds towards that advantage. Yeah. So Wells Fargo may have had that trust advantage, blew it all really astoundingly. And so that was just something that popped into my head.
Yeah, it's not forever. It's not a given that when you have an advantage that you're going to maintain that advantage. And you need to shepherd it. You need to be careful. It'd be interesting too to think about what how brands, libraries as brands or others, changed during the COVID. I mean, and during other changes, but definitely during COVID. I mean, who shifted to become more about alert? And, I think there was definitely some things in, alert where you are, there was something in there that she talked about alert as FOMO, which I think is a big thing that we do now, and it's a big part of our messaging. Of a lot of our messaging now is just making sure people are not, saying, hey, if you're not going to do this, you're going to miss out. And now that we have this environment of more temporal, like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. We didn't know, a year and a half ago that everything was going to shut down and everything was going to change. So get it while you can. And so it'd be interesting to see kind of like who evolved and which of the tactics, like you said, Rachel, you said, you may want to use some passion tactics and tell some stories and evoke some emotions and things like that. But, maybe there's times now where using some alert tactics or using some other, even prestige tactics, might work in this kind of new environment. So what other thoughts?
I hadn't actually taken the test, and I need to, but I just looking at it, I think why it spoke to me for alert is because we're a law library.
Yeah.
And when you're a public library, and I worked in the public library for a long time, I worked in a business and music and art, as well as Alcoa for a few years, which I loved, and a couple law firms, which I'll never do again. I am right where I need to be. I'm exactly where I need to be. But there's this preciseness that attorneys expect, and why they should. Expect that from us. We have to be on the ball almost more so sometimes than they are, if that makes sense. Being aware that maybe a court rule has changed kind of thing. So that's why I was like, trust is part of it.
Sure.
We've been around 150 years, so I think we've built up
if you have, it's great.
Trust. But the alert of like, we're still here, we're still viable. it's not all about just books, but it isn't all online either.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
like
it's a
the
good
fact
point.
that she had that, like Angela said, that combination. Because if nothing else, I think it comes across that I'm passionate about what I do. I do love it. I absolutely love it. It's the one thing I got in my life that was right.
That's right. It's very good.
Because I do it a lot. So,
Yeah.
and I've been doing it for a lot of years too.
Yeah.
But the idea that you can combine those, it isn't like you're pigeonholed in one particular area. You can combine some of those other, and maybe you don't think about it. One of the things that I did with, and I said this before, one of the things I did on one of my newsletters is I took one of the books that's only in book form, it's not online, and I said it was Pardons on Steroids, which pardons is our statutes. But the fact that I said it was on steroids, you should have seen how fast those books were going off the shelf within the next month. I had no idea, but it's like that was my passion showing through.
Yeah.
I'm alerting them, but I'm also injecting my enthusiasm. So.
Yeah. It's interesting. You know, there are definitely ways that you can apply a lot of different tactics to utilize the different advantages. And I think what's interesting about that is that's a good way. That's an interesting way to adjust your message perhaps sometimes for your customers. So you might have, so this other system that I had certified in a few years back had to do with, as a lot of these personality kind of test and based things have, talking to your customer in the way that they like to be talked to, which, is something I think we all hear a lot about. So it was, some people are into details, some people are into talking, some people are into, have to go off and think about something before they do, and some people are into power. And if you're talking to people in different ways, then, that's going to get the message across better, so you can adjust your communication. And I think it's the same thing here. I mean, I think if you knew that there were people, while one of the things, and I don't think it was I think it's more in the other book, the How the World Sees You book, but there is something about when you know more about the advantages and how they work and things, you can see that in other people. So you can recognize that, that this group is probably going to respond better to something that's more, that's more about being organized and, and everything that's alert, being organized and detailed and, and established processes and things like that. And that's what it is. Whereas, if you're talking to another group, well, they may respond better to things that are more like trust. So yeah, it's, while it doesn't focus on customer in the same way as some contemporary books do, it has that possibility. So it's going to be interesting to see what her next book is and how that book, how it does focus, or if it does focus more on some of those other contemporary things. So was anybody that read the book that didn't really care for it, or anybody that thought, oh, it's, or was there anything in the book that you thought, oh, this is, seriously dated, other than Wells Fargo, obviously, but anything else about a book that was written in 2008 and updated a few years ago that seemed like, oh, it maybe missed the mark, or anything particular that you thought caught your eye?
I'm curious, did you ask her anything about that in your interview? Like what she would have included if she could use the last 5 years of material?
That's a good question, Hannah. I talked about a couple things, but I didn't ask it in that way exactly. I'm trying to think of what we talked about. There were some, in the conversation though, around kind of that stuff, when I asked her that idea of like, well, a lot of books today are about the customer and a lot of that. Something that I thought was kind of cool was that she brought it back to like libraries and how using a library can provide people with confidence, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot too. Like, what is that essence? And I think it was either looking at StoryBrand, or it might even have been Alan Dibb's book, the one-page marketing plan, one of those books where, kind of looked at the essence of what customers is. I think it was StoryBrand, and kind of going down beyond that level of the, you have the, I forget what he calls it right now, but it's like you have your external and your internal and your philosophical needs that that a customer is looking for. And I was trying to figure out what that philosophical, and I was thinking, confidence might be one thing. And it was neat. She talked about like how, yes, libraries can provide that confidence for somebody. And she even talked about some other ideas, kind of, Rachel, to talk to some of the tactics. She did talk about some tactics and talked about like getting into if you're going on a first date, go to the library and study up on some stuff, and you could kind of, have, you could have 6 or 7 dates worth of material if you go in a library and feel confident about it. But Hannah, when, I think as we talked about her next book and kind of where that's gone and where that's evolved, I think that's the differentiation. So she did talk a little bit about, she started out by talking kind of about the writing and publication process, which was interesting. If you hadn't, and I hadn't been that close to that process before. And she did talk about kind of like how she upgraded the book previously. But yeah, I don't know if I got a great answer about if she had written that book today. She definitely talked about how the book itself, when it was written in 2008, which is right at the time of the financial crisis. So everything was collapsing, .com was going away, and everybody was just worried about, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? How am I going to be valuable in this marketplace when everything is just falling apart? And so I think we talked a little bit maybe about how there is obviously a parallel with that, today, right now, maybe not last 5 years, but last year and a half of, there are definitely some principles that probably come back now because of the state of the economy. But yeah, it's a good question. And she did ask us to keep in touch. So maybe we can see if she can ask that. So yeah, great question. What other things does anybody else have to share, or questions or thoughts? Or we can always break into what's going on in library marketing. Always a great topic. If anybody has anything, we can take a break from this for one moment. I would like to let Angela Hirsch, who is going to be at CM World next week at Content Marketing World. Is anybody else going to Content Marketing World? I was so hoping to, but I am unfortunately not going to. But a really great conference. I know it's a pricey conference, but it's a really great conference. So if you can get there in future years, it'd be a great opportunity. But Angela, you are having a practice tomorrow.
I am. I put the link in the chat. I'm doing a 20-minute, it's kind of like a TED Talk, basically, where I will be talking about libraries that are telling stories and changing the public's perception of what they do and what brands can learn from libraries, which is kind of flipping some of the marketing books that we have been reading on their heads.
Yeah.
So it's not polished yet, but I'm getting there. And I felt like I needed to do live practice in front of as big of a audience as I can get. I am doing the talk actually in person. I'm actually going to the conference. It's here in Ohio, so nice. I can drive there, but you can buy a virtual ticket to the conference, and that's pretty reasonably priced, and every in-person session is going to be broadcast virtually, so you can still watch it virtually. But anyway, if you don't want to do that and you want to see the unpolished version of my talk, see me at 1:00 tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to try to do it in front of a live audience. I don't know. It's been a while since I have done a live presentation, so we'll see how this goes.
Should be good.
But yeah, and then you can just, email me or whatever your feedback if you have thoughts. I have to turn my slides in on Friday. So if you have any comments on the slides, you got to tell me now. I got
Very
whispered
good.
in.
What's the topic, Angela? Oh, you already said. I mean, it's you already said, I guess.
Yeah, and I can actually, I'll pull it from the Content Marketing World agenda so you guys can see it. But yeah, this has kind of been a dream of mine to speak at this conference. It's really, it's not usually visited by libraries, so it's not a library audience, but it's a good chance to advocate for libraries with a bunch of people who may not have any idea what it is all y'all are doing. So that's how I'm approaching it. And I'm just going to do it one time and then I can say I did it.
Right,
Check it off my list.
And then you can just be a participant.
I can just go back to being a participant. Yeah.
Very nice.
But yeah,
very
if
good.
you guys could come, that would be great. Thank you.
That would be
Thanks,
great.
Chris.
That'd be great. So what other things does anybody have? Is anybody thinking who has read the book? Anybody thinking about implementing? I mean, I think Rachel, you talked about a little thing. Angela, you talked about a couple things. Anybody else thinking of any implementations of this, or or yeah, any other thoughts? Any other thoughts on the books?
Well, one thing I kept thinking about is I feel like people are fascinated with libraries like as a general term. Like whenever I tell people, oh, I work at the library, they're like, oh my gosh, I love libraries. But it's like digging into like, well, why? And I was talking with some of my colleagues about this recently that work in teaching and learning. And they're like, they feel like a lot of people's fascination with libraries is around this idea of like sitting in a place surrounded by books, like by yourself, and doesn't always have to do with the actual services that we provide. And so in reading her book, I was like really trying to think like, okay, how do you bridge that? How do you get people to actually connect with the services and not just be in love with like being surrounded by books in this like historical place that's preserving things? And I don't have an answer, but that kept coming to mind as I was reading it.
That is interesting. Anybody have any thoughts on that? On how to get somebody from being awed by libraries to being to being engaged or creating that fascinating experience?
I agree with Hannah in that, just the word library, it's books. That's what's in their head. And they may have whatever they grew up with, whatever it is, and going beyond that is not easy. Even when we had a position open, we had one person apply. She was very good, but the problem was to her that the library was a legacy. Well, I don't want to be a legacy. That's part of who we are, but that isn't all of who we are.
Right.
And if we don't move forward, then we become irrelevant. We aren't different. All we are is the same, having the same information and whatever without any extras, bells, whistles, whatever you want to add. So I just found it very interesting that a lot of times you're right, and I get that reaction. I love libraries, and they're specifically talking about books. And yes, that's part of it, but but we also are combating the other side of everything is not online. That is a constant battle. Especially in the law world, they think they can get everything they ever needed on Westlaw or Lexis and not have to look anywhere else. Yeah. Well, and the rest of us are also Google or Wikipedia. So I don't care if you start there, but don't stop there. That's all I ask.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great.
We are all such a wealth of information. It's easy to dismiss the librarian themselves, even as being a bookish person, not being current. I mean, if it weren't, I started with Facebook with my daughter. Now that's why I'm in marketing here. So, I mean, I was the one that had done it. It had, just to keep in touch with her, but was familiar with it, was comfortable. So, hey, what about doing this? And then all of a sudden I'm doing the newsletter. I'm doing, advertising for continuing legal education. I have to call people to come in for programs and whatever. And we're the only county law library, in the county. So, but I'm also finding out that some of the other libraries are starting to get Westlaw, but here's the thing, do they know how to use it?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
how we're different. Plus we have more information behind that.
Right.
I have to work that difference in somehow and reach the people that we may not have been reaching so far, especially the public, because we are open to the public.
Yeah.
And people, we're the best kept secret in Pittsburgh. I'm trying not, I am fighting that with every tooth and nail, but.
Yeah. I think that's, I think that's good, Lori. I think, and Hannah, something else that she said in the interview, similar to what you're saying, Lori, is you can Google, I can Google, we can get Google results. That's not different. The library can be different. The library can provide, like Lori was saying, different experience, different angles, different depth of research, different breadth of research. And there are some other things. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think, sometimes I think, and I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about this, but, can we use that awe of the library? Can we use that
mistake
as the, yes, right. Can we use that as the lure to get people in? And then we can show them what's deeper than that. So, how can we use that awe to say, to create those messages, like what Rachel was talking about, you can use trust, but you can use the passion tactic, and you can kind of use that, imagine yourself sitting in this beautiful room in your library and reading and enjoying, and kind of stir up that passion in people to go, oh, I want to go. How can I not go to this library? And, maybe that's the lure to get them in. And then, and then you can help them understand how, and when you use these resources, here's how you can be fascinating to your friends, to your family. This is how you can become a more fascinating person, and kind of dip into the other stuff. Sarah, I saw you unmuted. Did you have something?
Yes, I do. What we found at our library, people are most fascinated by is our people. And they want to know they want to know what we do all day. They want to know how we spend our day. But actually, the things that are the most popular are pictures of people's pets and the books they're reading and the trips they take. And I'm in an academic medical library, so it has completely nothing to do with our collection. But they want to know about us.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what fascinates them, I guess, would be the word.
Yeah, and that is, and so that's a way again to kind of expose yourself as being, you can fascinate people, you can grab them, you can draw them in, and that's how you can get them to engage. So, you get more engaged with our staff, you feel like you're more a part of the family, and maybe that's the angle that you go in after. So yeah, it's definitely people like, I always. Yes, they're curious. And I think people still, I still like when I see the recommendations of people, because it brings me back to like the days of Blockbuster Video, for anybody who was around when Blockbuster Video was still a thing. But having those different recommendations from people, and I think that's a pretty neat thing. So
what are you reading? What have you read lately? What movie did you like on Netflix?
yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, I think it's pretty fun. What other things are going on? Anybody have anything? Again, we've got a few minutes. I mean, any other questions or thoughts or book suggestions, anything? How's it going? How's finding time to read? What's happening, Brianna?
I was just gonna try and chime in. This tags a little bit to Hannah, and then it's actually gonna tie to Angela. So we mimicked the Libraries in Power campaign that ALA was doing for Library Card Sign Up Month.
Okay.
And we just made our own little bookmarks where people can tell us, and they enter our own contest. And again, it's fascinating because, reading through most of the responses, it's very tied to books. And that, again, that sort of that awe and that, just, I love to read, it's a world of opportunities and stuff. And if, these are already library users, which is nice.
Yeah.
But again, I keep just circling back to when I began in my position, and still to this day, so much of the heavy focus is on promoting programs, promoting events.
Right.
And this is where Angela's blog comes in, which is we're forgetting about, or I'm just trying to kind of not consolidate, but make these things work together where it's like, but people respond to the books.
Yeah.
And it's like, but the books, it's like so it's like trying to reconcile both of these halves together. And, I've got all my programmers who obviously want attendance at their programs,
right,
and then tying it into, but people respond, and when they think of us, they think of our collection. And so really making that part the feature, and that's what kind of gets them interested and engaged, and trying just to put these things together. And I don't have an answer yet, but it was just, that's kind of circling around in my brain. So
can I say real quick, Brianna, one of the things that I did since our program tomorrow by the Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, it's really there for the public. They're trying to educate the public about the legal system and that kind of thing, including court basics. It's a great group. But one of the things that I did for the landlord tenant was to put together, I haven't gotten it to the LibGuide version yet, but I definitely put a bibliography, but it's not just a bibliography, it has websites in it too. So one of the great things that we discovered was the housing court has a list of all these forms that people can use. So that's going to be part of the program. It's going to be part of the handout. It's also PR for us. So, and if you want to borrow a book, you have to be a member. So.
Yeah, we're getting closer to having more, having our programs be more aligned with the collection. So it's not just that it's about like, oh, we don't do a program unless, we have something, but we are like looking to, just like you're saying, Brianna, how to convert somebody from program attendee to borrower to, and programs are good and programs are valuable, but it's hard not to see when you stand back and see, this part of it is programs and this part of the library is books. And, it's hard not to see that for us, but I don't know what it is. Programs take more time and energy to create, and they're more active, and we're not writing the books. We're not all involved in the collection development. And, collection development has kind of become something that's very behind the scenes, it seems, or maybe it hasn't become. I don't know. I've been in libraries for only so long, and it's been behind the scenes relatively to, to a lot of the stuff that we do, but programs are right out there. And but I think it's right. And I think, again, when you see Sally's interview, I mean, she talks about even the difference between print books and audio books and digital books. Like she even talks about, talking to a publisher and they saying, no, print is not going away. Like it's not, this is not a replacement. This isn't, print is not your cassette tapes for your CDs. I mean, print is has staying power. And so, yes, obviously we need to recognize that and promote that and spend some time and energy on that. And I think there's a good way to do that and to get people to feel fascinating. There's something that I saw that was pretty cool. There's nobody here from Seattle, is there? I don't think so. I don't know how old this program is, but has anybody seen Seattle's? It's like Reader's Advisory, but it's called Get Your Skill or something like that. So it is Reader's Advisory, but the cool way that they position it is, hey, you want to learn something? tell us what you want to learn, and we'll put together a list of books and resources about what you want to learn. So it probably doesn't take any different process from Reader's Advisory. It's just a different way of suggesting a topic, rather than saying like, oh, you like fiction, you like nonfiction, you like, what's that? And we'll create a special book list for you. It's, hey, you want to learn how to play guitar, then we'll give you a bunch of resources on how to play guitar. I thought that was a super cool way of using something and using it differently than I think many, maybe not, I don't know, maybe there are a lot of libraries that do that, but that was the first time I'd seen it. So yeah, and if Angela hasn't seen it, then
I'm writing this one down. That's a good suggestion.
The good kudos for
yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So yeah, well, we got just a few minutes left. Any last thoughts about the book? Any thoughts about books upcoming, or any last questions about library marketing while we have 11 library marketers here?
One of the things that I hope that we do, we have an attorney on staff. She's not allowed to practice law here, but she's very well versed, and she's pulling together forms. Now, like I said, the housing court has a great website with all their forms there.
Sure.
I said, if we pull the forms together for the other courts, can we not approach them and somehow have a disclaimer that we aren't going to get in trouble over it, but we've compiled this list?
Yeah.
Because some of the materials are not online. Some of the forms are only in books, and she knows what's the best. So I said, why not leverage that with the courts and with the public, that they can get to these things as quickly and easily as possible. Yeah. So I'm working on it.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Why not? We're already doing it. Why not publicize it with the court, and then we get a little bit of PR out of that too.
A different advisory service, definitely. Yes. Yeah. Something we'd like to do too is with Library Aware. We'd like to find ways to share more of our book lists and book rivers with other organizations. So, our local chamber, hey, here's some books on business. Here's a book river. We get it onto their website, and then there you go. It's a track back to the library, and I really want to try and find some places to do that. I've tried with local news organizations, and I realized there's probably some I don't know, some ethical thing or something, I don't know, or some advertising dollar thing that reason why they might not be interested in it. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to try and find ways to connect with other organizations. Sarah Andrews, was it you who won the book last month, or was it a different Sarah? It wasn't you who won the book last month? No. Oh, okay. Well, then that other Sarah, I still owe her that, because we got things off track. But okay, so as we usually do, we'll do a drawing for a copy of the book. The book next month is The New Rules of Marketing and PR, another book that was written a little while ago. I think it was maybe 2014. I can't remember when it was, but it was a few years back, but it's been updated. Like, he's been updating every year. Oh, Angela has a copy of it. There you go. So yes, New Rules of Marketing and PR by David Meerman Scott. And reached out to David, and he said, sure, I'd love to come and join, which is so awesome. I was like, I don't know. To me, I'm like, these are like the rock stars of our world. Like Anne handling.
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
So David will be here next month, and that'll be pretty awesome. We'll have a good time. But so we need to pick a winner for this month. So Sarah Andrews, since I called you out because you weren't the Sarah that won last month, Sarah, pick a number between. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 1 and 10.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Angela Rhines. Angela Rhines.
Oh, good. I'm like, I got it already.
You'll have to figure that out once we start building real collections. We'll have to figure out some good alternatives. But
Yeah.
Angela Rhines, yes. So congratulations. I'll get you a copy of that, or whatever format you prefer. And thank you everybody so much. Thanks to everybody who's been a long hauler, been here for the year, and thanks to everybody who joined since. It's really great. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are having a good time. I'll get you all out a survey. I'll get Sally's video out soon, and feel free to share anything anytime on the group on Facebook, or send it to me, and we can get it out in an email. So thanks so much, everybody. It's great to see. And don't forget to attend Angela Hirsch's, if you're available to attend Angela Hirsch's practice tomorrow. You're getting free slice of CM World by going to see Angela's thing. And good luck, Angela. We know
Thank you. I'm gonna need it.
All right, that's it, everybody. Thanks so much.
Right.
Great to see
Bye.
you.
Good to see
Bye.
everybody.
All soon. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.